Sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin Ursula von der Leyen, sehr geehrter
President von der Leyen,
Kollege Heiko
colleague Maas,
Ministerkollegen,
ministers,
Staatssekretäre,
state secretaries,
Zuschauer in aller
viewers
rund unseren
all around the world.
Es ist der 7. Berlin.
This is the 7th Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue, and
bisher
probably this is the most important one so far.
Maas hat gesagt,
Heiko Maas has said that we've got 30 years to meet our target of climate neutrality.
wir schauen aber auch zurück,
But we're also looking back at 30 years,
in denen
in which
Zehntausende, Hunderttausende
tens and hundreds of thousands of citizens, activists, idealists,
NGOs,
NGOs,
Regierungsvertretern, Ministern
government representatives, prime ministers
das Ziel von
have
Nachhaltigkeit,
advocated
Energiewende und
the
Klimaschutz
targets of sustainability, the energy transition, and climate neutrality. And we're looking back on a large
und Niederlagen
series of setbacks
auf bemerkenswerte
and defeats, but also at remarkable successes.
dieser Zeit gelungen,
And we have succeeded in this time
Ausstoß in einigen
in
Ländern zu reduzieren.
reducing carbon emissions in certain parts of the world, while in others it has risen substantially. Germany, as we will be hearing today,
Sein Ziel,
has achieved its
CO2-Ausstoß von 1990
goal of cutting carbon emissions from 1990
reduzieren,
by 2020 by 40%,
aufgrund der
not least due to the events in the last few months. We were all very sad when
entscheiden mussten,
we had to decide to make the 7th Berlin Energy Transition Day a video conference, an online conference, rather than all coming together in person
hier in Berlin.
in Berlin. But
Die Möglichkeit, auf diese Weise
in this way,
viel mehr Menschen daran
we have the possibility of involving far more people, and
zuschauen, alle die
everybody watching,
über die Ergebnisse dieser
everybody
Konferenz in ihren Ländern diskutieren,
reporting and discussing the results of this conference in your countries.
die es in der Hand haben, ob das große Ziel.
You will help to make this big
Als wir vor 7
objective
Jahren
a
begonnen
success. Now, when we began 7 years ago with the
Transition Day,
Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue, we
über Energy Transition,
talked about the energy transition, we talked about the Energiewende, the energy transition, and
wichtiger
that is a very important point.
sprechen wir
Today,
über Climate Neutrality.
we're talking about something different, about climate neutrality, and
Mehr ist als nur
that's more than just a quantitative shift, it's a qualitative change. We believe that we can achieve climate neutrality within 3 decades.
dass dieses Ziel
And this goal is more than just a vision or an idea.
wir der Europäischen
The
Kommission
fact that this is the case, we owe to the European Commission and the European Parliament,
Green Deal zu arbeiten.
to all those who are willing to work for the Green Deal, to take risks, to take decisions. And we owe it to those who in their countries, in Asia,
in Amerika
in America, in Africa,
diese Entwicklung aufgegriffen haben.
have taken up this development.
Dass sich so viele
The fact that so many industrial regions,
Südkorea,
South Korea, Japan,
bereits verpflichtet haben,
have already committed to attaining this goal. The fact that a country like the People's Republic of China has said that might not manage it in 2050, but 2060 is
soweit sein.
the aim.
Dass so
The
viele
fact that so many oil-producing and gas-producing countries have recognized that the future
Investitionen in
lies in investment in
nachhaltigen Energie,
renewable, sustainable energy.
alles ist Grund.
All of this gives us grounds for hope.
Freuen wir uns
In particular, we are glad that the United States, that our American friends,
wieder mit,
are back on board.
sind wieder Teil des
They are part of the Paris Climate Agreement again, and we are delighted that not only Ursula von der Leyen
Transition Day mit
will be participating in this transition day,
bereichern wird. Wir freuen
but we're also particularly
uns, dass der
glad that the Climate
der,
Commissioner,
Secretary
Secretary John Kerry,
einer der erfahrensten,
one of the most experienced
weitsichtigsten,
and far-sighted politicians in the United States,
sich bereit erklärt,
has
heute eine
stated his willingness to join us with a keynote.
Heiko Maas und ich
Heiko Maas and I
beide mit ihm telefoniert.
have both called him on the phone.
Amerikanischen Kollegin,
We
der
have
Energieministerin Jennifer
Talked to Jennifer Cranwell, the Energy Secretary, and we know how important the changes that's happening in the United States, that all this has to be an opportunity for us. We now need to grab this opportunity. It has to be an opportunity to ensure that we can achieve the goal in 2050, in fact. Now or never. We need to take this opportunity. We need to do things properly. We need to make agreements. We need to set binding targets globally, regionally, and in each country. And it's not just a service to help the climate, it's also a service to help our economies, because the future will show that it's possible to combine sustainability and climate action with prosperity. The developing countries, like the emerging and transition economies, need to work together with the industrial countries, and we need to have the courage to embark on the necessary changes. Germany was looked at askance when we started moving on an energy transition years ago from fossil fuels towards an energy industry based on working with renewables. Now, maybe that's possible in, say, service-based economies, but in an industrial economy like Germany, they said it was impossible. That's what they told us. And today, almost 50% of our electricity consumption is covered by renewable energy sources in Germany. And that is the case even though we cannot use a lot of hydroelectric power. We have managed through photovoltaics, through wind, through biogas, through biomass, to create an energy transition which ensures our energy security, which maintains the high quality of our energy supply, has never put it at risk. And we are also experiencing that in many dozen, probably more than 100 countries in this world, similar developments are continuing. Offshore and onshore wind energy, and in many cases, renewable energy is already available at market prices, unsubsidized prices, and we couldn't imagine that 20 years ago. And therefore, the history of the last 20 or 30 years really is a history that encourages us for the future, that we can continue to progress along the path. And therefore, we need to continue to focus on technology, we need to focus on digitalization, we need to focus on an international green hydrogen economy. We need to create the infrastructure to transport, distribute, and consume this green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is climate-neutral hydrogen. It's been produced via renewable energies and electrolyzers in countries and regions in the world where the climate conditions, the weather conditions, the wind and the sun are much more favorable than in countries like Germany or in other European countries in our immediate neighborhood. And this hydrogen can be transported by ships, by pipelines, just as oil and gas is transported today. And it can also help to place our renewable energy-based energy sector on a permanent basis in a way that photovoltaics and wind and sun can't manage themselves. So this is an exciting and important journey because we are having developed new technologies to transport this hydrogen, because we need to produce it as energy efficiently as possible, because we need energy infrastructure which ensures that it can be transported to where it's needed. And we know that we can make climate-neutral green steel by replacing the coking coal, which is one of the greatest emitters of carbon, CO2 in industry. We can replace it by green hydrogen, and it works. It's proven, it's been confirmed. You need to invest in new blast furnaces, in new production technologies, and then you can produce green steel, green copper, green aluminium, and much more. It's possible to develop green chemistry on the basis of green hydrogen. It's possible to have sector coupling, sector integration on the basis of green hydrogen. Other people like Elon Musk are working on alternative propulsion concepts with battery technologies. In Europe alone, in the next few years, tens of thousands of jobs will be created in battery cell production facilities, in gigafactories, so that the rapidly rising demand for batteries can be met. Green hydrogen in fuel cells, synthetic petrol, gasoline on the basis of renewable energies. All that will help us. But in order to achieve this goal, we need not only technology and innovation, we also need cooperation in particular, international global cooperation. And it can't be a question of who is the strongest. The question must be who is the most innovative, who is the most willing to go along this path and to be ahead of the field. With the return of the United States to the Paris Climate Agreement, we have a new window, a unique window of opportunity in order to bring the large industrial countries together to create the conditions to ensure that the emerging economies, the developing economies can join in this development. In the past, we've already invested a lot of money in the energy transition and climate action. Now we have the opportunity to reduce costs for the future by cooperating with each other, by setting comparable goals and interim goals. I want a strong transatlantic energy partnership between the European Union on the one hand and the United States on the other hand. Not as an exclusive and privileged partnership, but rather as encouragement for others. We can use this year, which has begun so badly with the pandemic around the world, we can use this year as a year of a new start for everybody, for the climate, and particularly for our children and our grandchildren. That is our obligation. That is our mandate.